So I think we can start now. So hi everybody. I'm thrilled to be able to speak at this year's JiraCon. And the session I'm hosting today is called Take Control of Data Privacy, How to Protect Yourself and Your Jira Users. And before I introduce you to myself and our company Actonic, I would quickly jump right into the topic with this meme, so you know right from the beginning what you can expect from today's session. For some of you, this is for sure a familiar situation, and it sums up the complexity of this topic pretty well. Because if someone ever tried to explain GDPR terms to you before, this is probably how he or she felt. And I found myself in this situation many times before. So I decided, let's try to change that. If GDPR sounds complicated and kind of boring to you, don't worry, I'm here now for the rescue. And that's most likely the right time for me to introduce myself. Hi, everybody again. I'm Laura, and I'm part of the Actonic Marketing team, responsible for partners, webinars, and events. And today I'm not only here because I'm in charge of events, but I'm also here to help you get more insights into GDPR. So let's see if the next 40 minutes are enough for you to become a full GDPR expert. Shortly about Actonic, for those who don't know us yet, we are a German-based Atlassian solution partner and a marketplace vendor, and we're offering services such as consulting and training, as well as product development. We have numerous apps in the Atlassian marketplace, and we are also doing custom development for our clients. And why is data privacy such a topic of interest for us? Well, at Actonic, our primary goal is to provide the most value for our customers. And that means providing solutions for their problems. And just to map out what we are doing today, here is the agenda for my session. And this should just give you a better overview of what to expect. We are starting right here in a state of total confusion, and you don't understand why I gave you this kind of intro yet. At least I hope it will be much more clearer at the end of today's session. And then we will start about talking GDPR itself, what it means in the context with the Atlassian ecosystem and the resulting challenges. And afterwards, I will explain the built-in possibilities to be GDPR compliant and give you a quick deep dive into our own solution. If you have any questions during today's session, please feel free to ask them in the chat. We will do our best to answer as many of them as possible. But since GDPR is a very complex topic, we kindly ask you to come to our booth afterwards so we can discuss your questions one-on-one in detail. Thank you. So let's start talking about GDPR. And we start with the thing most people are afraid of, fines. And this might also be the only thing you heard about GDPR before. Companies violating GDPR and they are fined millions and millions of dollars. Might be effective, but fear is not really a positive motivation and a good selling point to be GDPR compliant, right? But GDPR is not only about fines. It's here to protect you and your user. And after all, you also buckle up for safety in the car. So why should we have safety in our everyday work as well? Shortly about GDPR. GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation and is known as one of the toughest data privacy and security laws since it was put on effect in May 2018. I will use GDPR as a prime example here for this presentation, but I'm talking about all the data protection regulations in general. Since GDPR serves as a model for most of the protection guidelines, it's very suitable to use here. So GDPR affects organizations anywhere as long as they target or collect data from people in the EU. So even if your company is not there, if you collect personal data from EU citizens, you must be GDPR compliant. But what is personal data? The regulation is so careful about. Personal data, short PII, are any information which are related to an already identified or potentially identifiable natural person. And it's protected explicitly in terms of usage, storage, and disclosure. First thing always came to my mind here was like my name or my address, but there are way more data which counts as personal data. For example, my birth date or the IP address, my social security number, my ID card number, bank information, license plate, and many more. So the list of different kinds of personal data or PII is quite long. And since the definition includes any information, you must assume that the term personal data should be as broadly interpreted as possible. And according to the GDPR, you must follow some rules when you are processing this. Conversely, this means that people whose data you process have certain rights regarding to handling of their data. And for a company, it's crucial to understand those privacy rights. At this point, I want to shortly mention some of the privacy rights, just again to give you a better insight what it means. And this way, you know your legal obligations and the right of your users and almost anything else to be GDPR compliant. Well, maybe not quite yet, but it will be. And I also try to break it down as simply as possible without using any incomprehensible legal text, which you could Google and look up after yourself. So I try to break it down. The first one I want to briefly mention here is the right to be informed. The right to be informed means the obligation of you as a company to provide data privacy information. Those who are affected should be informed about what happens with their data once they have been disclosed. And if this provided information is not enough for the data subject, which means your customer in this example, another privacy right of the GDPR comes right into play, the right of access. And the right of access gives your customer the right to request information or additional information about their stored data. This is a two-stage of information process. So in the first step, the company or you in this case must provide the data subjects with general information whenever personal data is being processed. And if this is the case, the second step comes into play. You have to provide further information about the purpose of the processing of the data or about the recipients, about the storage period, and much more. And the last right I want to briefly mention here, or should be discussed, is the right to be forgotten. The right to be forgotten gives every person the opportunity to demand that companies delete all personal data they have stored about them. This includes names, usernames, avatars, personal settings. And the request needs to be complied within 1 month. So what this means for you, if you have data about people stored in your Atlassian instances, you have to, and they request that they delete the data, you have to do so as soon as possible, at least within 1 month. And these 3 rights were by no means all the privacy rights that are addressed in the GDPR, but it gives us a good first insight what's behind all that and what challenges arise as a result. And that's the next slide. With the GDPR, companies are faced with many requirements at once. And the most difficult challenges resulting out of the GDPR can be summarized as follows. It's the lack of knowledge, the lack of time, and the lack of capacity. In the GDPR, or when you want to be GDPR compliant, you have to document a lot of processes, and sometimes action needs to be taken quickly. For example, in the event of a data breach. Those people who are affected from this data breach must be notified within a period of time, not longer than 72 hours. And also the GDPR is very process orientated. So processes are defined that must be adhered to in certain cases. And these new processes must first be, must first be established in a company. And the larger your company is, the more difficult it becomes to keep track of things. Give me 1 second, I need a sip of water. Thanks. So, and where were we? As you can see, some challenges make data protection compliance not exactly as easy to achieve, at least for now. And to avoid the GDPR challenges I just mentioned, there are a few key points you could keep in mind. At first, you should know what data is collected and for what purpose. And in addition, it may well be necessary to hire a data protection officer who's responsible for important activities. And above all, you should be aware that many of your systems contain personal data. What a kind of perfect transition. So let's just have a look what this means for your Jira instance, because we just learned GDPR is all about personal data. What does this mean for you and for your Atlassian instances? Many companies use Jira as part of their data storage processes for personal data. That means that you probably have a lot of personal data like this publicly in your Jira instance at this very moment. For example, from employees or freelancers, from clients, partners, and many more. And that happens more often than you think. For example, if one of your customers creates a ticket which contains personal data like login data when they open a support ticket, or one of your job applicants sends an application via the Jira issue collector, or just relevant data is shared company-wide, maybe even internationally between teams, via comments, via descriptions, attachment, and linked Confluence pages. And this example proves that personal and sensitive data can be part of Jira instances in companies and need to be underlying the GDPR settings for PII handling. And because Jira belongs to Atlassian, at first you might think, well, it's not my responsibility. But well, this is only partially true. Atlassian is jointly responsible for data privacy as the system provider of Jira and Confluence, especially on cloud instances. Therefore, the Australian company has published a GDPR commitment, which officially address all kinds of regulations and technical features connected to data privacy in Jira. But you as a company are also responsible for data privacy in Jira as well, simply because you're signing a contract with your customer, with your employee, etc., and you will receive their data. If a customer requires information on personal data, the anonymization or the deletion, it's your responsibility direct. And we previously covered what GDPR relevant data could look like in Jira. So let's just have a look at Atlassian out-of-the-box possibilities to stay GDPR compliant. At first, we have here the data residency. Options regarding data residency in the Atlassian ecosystem has been one of the most requested features since Atlassian announced the end of life for server licenses. And they have listening to their clients and have been offering to choose between different locations, and regions followed and plans followed. And for data center users, of course, customers can freely select their location according to their needs and wishes. So the topic of data residency is therefore covered by Atlassian. The next one would be encryption. One of the goals of the GDPR is to protect users' data by avoiding security breaches as effectively as possible. And to that end, obviously, encryption is an extremely useful tool in order to prevent attackers from gaining any valuable information, even if they should manage to extract any data. So Atlassian is taking care of this on their servers by fully encrypting customers' data when stored by Atlassian in their cloud. So the encryption of data is also a topic that is covered by Atlassian. We can't really change that, and it should be solved satisfactorily for most of the users. The next topic I would briefly mention is the user anonymization. You need the process of user anonymization in case when someone is leaving your company, for example. When someone is leaving your organization, you are required to erase their personal data as long as you don't need it anymore. And Atlassian provides a way of doing so for both managed and non-managed cloud accounts, as well as on-premise installation in different ways without the need of an extra add-on. But here I have to say it's not serving all of the use cases you might have, but we will come to that point a little later. The next thing we want to discuss, and another topic that is legally covered by the GDPR and must be considered by companies, are privacy policies. More importantly, how to get their consent, how to keep track who agreed, when it was agreed, and so on. There is where the built-in opportunities in Jira are a bit basic. In cloud, you have the actual Atlassian account usage covered, but nothing else. And for data center, there are no options at all right now. And moving on to the last of our data privacy challenges, it's the subject access request. This becomes important for you in case someone acts on their right of access, and one of the privacy rights we just talked about. To be GDPR compliant, you need to be able to quickly gather all personal data that belongs to a specific individual to create a comprehensive report for this person. And Atlassian provides some ways to do this for cloud as well as for data center, but it neither involves submitting a support request, it either involves submitting a support request to Atlassian, or it requires you to perform series of manual steps to gather all the necessary information. So just as we saw, Atlassian does not cover all of the things on all of the use cases you need to take care of to be GDPR compliant. To sum this up, Jira has little to no out-of-the-box options to individually design and personalize privacy policies. You can't really find and anonymize personal data, and you can transfer ownership to another user in case of user anonymization. Therefore, many companies work with self-developed scripts for data privacy, which are supposed to reduce manual tasks. And they are also supposed to help with data search and erasure in Jira. But imagine doing this for hundreds of customers each year in thousands of data records for multiple projects, support tickets, and many more. Sounds not only like a lot of work, but it actually is. And it's a source for immense errors, which could lead to massive consequences in a deal of GDPR. And that's why we developed something I want to present you now. It's called GDPR and Security for Jira, and it's one of the world's most famous and effective security suites, and the only one available in the marketplace to ensure data privacy compliant work with Jira. And it not only provides the obvious benefits, such as easy generation of automatic user content queries or data storage notifications. Actonic's data protection tool also makes life easier for system administrators. It allows you to avoid human errors caused by manual updates whilst enjoying a clean user interface for all data protection use cases. And additionally, it covers other data protection laws such as CCPR, HIPAA, and more. Because as I just mentioned at the beginning, GDPR here is just our example, and it can solve a lot of different use cases of other regulations. And for one of our previous examples, the right to be forgotten, the Jira version of the app includes the so-called data cleaner module. And by using this module, personal data can be found and deleted within a few minutes. This way, the month-long or 1 month-long deadline for deleting data is not a problem, and anonymizing just becomes a routine task. And through the app, we cover Jira and Confluence Server, Data Center, as well as Cloud. But I think this was far too much information to process. So just let's deep dive into our solution, and I will show you a little bit how it looks like. I will share my screen. So to access our app, you need to go at the settings to manage apps, because it's built for system administrators and you need certain permissions to use it, because GDPR is not a topic for every user. And then you find on the left sidebar our app. Here it is, GDPR and security. Our app is like an app suite, so it consists out of multiple tools, as you can see here. Right now we're on the home screen, and we have different modules right here. We have grouped them into categories. So we have notification, announcement, and policies. We have the data cleaner and anonymization, and we have the security breach investigation. And before you start with the app, you have to configure settings correctly, which already has been done here on our test instance. So you already see with the green check mark, everything is done, ready to start. So we can also have a quick look at the general settings here. These are our basic settings. The most important would be here the service user. So that service user is a user for tasks which runs in the background and they're executed by a specific user. But they're just general settings, and we can explain it to you if you're interested in a one-on-one talk in our booth. I think that's going too deep for now. I would suggest just I'm going right in our first module. It's called Policy, Agreements, Notification, and Announcements. So I'll tell you what it does and how it works. Here you can create any sort of announcements. Yeah, you can do that with Jira out of the box as well. So why did we develop that module? The built-in Jira announcement banners are static, so not really visually appealing, and you only have 2 visibility settings, no planning possibilities, no pre-made templates for cookies, and many more things we were missing when we were working with it. So we just thought, why don't develop our own? With this module, we have a lot of different use cases covered. In Jira, for example, you can target your information to specific subgroups without the support of an additional solution. And with the GDPR app, you can. So you are completely flexible with corporate communication. The first use case would be just use the app in the original sense and inform your employees about data protection regulations. Here you can save yourself lengthy research and simply select a template. So we have created templates for you. Either we have a privacy policy template or a cookie policy template. And you also can define the privacy policy template, for example, that your Jira users must accept this policy before even logging in. And when they don't accept it, the login will be denied. This is a real added value, especially for external colleagues, such as freelancer or customers. So how to implement this use case? I will give you a short insight of our settings. I will just use already done privacy policy for this. So here I can have a look at edit and we can see what's behind that. We have some general configurations and some additional configurations. So some general configurations about what is the status, is it enabled, disabled, the text, the copies, the name, the type, is it optional, is it required, and some additional configurations, the display type, for example, or to what group it will be shown, or the start date when your announcement will be displayed. To show you this, I will quickly change to another user, and then I will quickly show you how our privacy policy pop-up will look like. So I need to refresh the page, and then our policy will pop up. At least I hope so. Or it won't. Now it does perfectly. So you see, when I change the user to a dummy user, we see how our privacy policy looks like. And here I have the two options: I accept it or I decline it. And when I accept it, you can also see the report in the privacy policies. So you can see how your users, or which of your users accepted. Here I can see now 4 has accepted our policy. So I can just have a look at the statistic, what it says. And now here are our dummy user Daniel just accepted our privacy policy. And that's not the only use case. We of course have many more which are a bit more creative than privacy policies. For example, if your company operates globally, and as an attentive administrator, you want to make sure that your employees in the US get a little Independence Day congratulations just in time for the 4th of July. So you can just select the group with all your employees out of the US, and you can make them a little notification, set the time and when it should begin, when it should start, just as a little attention. And another use case would be if the deadline for an important software project is approaching, and you want to send out a friendly reminder with some additional information to your developers. So you just select the user group of developers, and the other Jira users, your other Jira users won't be distracted from the actual work. These are only a few examples. If you want to know all about the creative announcements, ideas we've come up with, just approach us at our booth and we can present you all the kind of use cases. And yeah, that would be a shortly overview over this module. I will quickly show you one of our next modules, and it's called the data cleaner. Here in our data cleaner, we are talking about two parts of anonymization, which is possible. So you can either anonymize users, or you can anonymize tickets or data. So as I mentioned before, Jira has a user anonymizer built in, where you can anonymize the user in the whole Jira instance. But what if you don't want to anonymize it in the whole instance, but anonymize it only partly? Or what if you don't want to anonymize the user, but rather transfer the ownership to another user? An example would be if a user changes his name. So you can just create a new user with the new name and just transfer the ownership from the previous user to the new one. And this way you don't lose all the data. And I will quickly show you what it looks here. So when I go to our user anonymizer, we have two options. We can either do a search called JiraCon, or start the anonymization right away. So I always recommend do a search or dry run first, because when something is anonymized, you can't undo it. For the dry run, it works the same as the anonymization process itself. So you just select the user you want to anonymize or a user you want to take the ownership from, and insert a target user. And then the ownership gets transferred to the new user, or you can just select a technical user here for the target user or a kind of dummy user and anonymize your source user. And once the search is done, here you can see a little execution summary right below. So I've done a search yesterday with my source user Daniel. It was just a search, so no actual anonymization. And here I have a little summary. So there are 4 affected issues for 3 total found shared objects and 0 failures. So everything in my search went well. And when I want to see a bit more in the actions, I can also go to show details. Then I will find all the tickets and all the comments my user did or was involved in. And so here in this case, the anonymization was fine. So we could actually start the dry run was fine. So we could actually start an anonymization and transfer the ownership from our user Daniel to someone else or to his new account. And what you also can do in the data cleaner is, as I briefly mentioned, you can anonymize content, so not only users, but you can anonymize tickets. That works totally the same with users. You have a target user. I can quickly go in. So you first have to decide, do you want to search or do you want to do a dry run? And then it's the same. You're looking for a target user, and then you find all kind of tickets, and everything will be anonymized. Doesn't matter who wrote a comment or who is assigned. And then I think we have time for another use case of our data cleaner. This use case is when you want to find something special. So it's not with a person, but you want to find personal data like credit card numbers, phone numbers, email addresses, or whatever. And here we have created a PII cleanup template. With our PII personal data cleanup template, you can search for personal information which should not be in your instance. For this, you just can configure a scope where the template should search for personal data. And then the crucial thing are here the rules. And we have, the rules are with regular expressions. If you're not so familiar with regular expressions, we have built-in rules made for you. For example, phone numbers. If you want to phone numbers for German phone numbers or for Austrian phone numbers, but also we can look for credit card numbers. So our template can search for any kind of personal information and personal data. And here in this rule, we see we are looking for standard international phone numbers. This status is enabled, it's regex. Here is displayed what the rule is looking for. And when they find it, they will just replace it with hashtags. So the data, the personal data which is found is just anonymized. And the crucial part here are really in the template are the rules. So if you're not so familiar with regex, just use our built-in rules. We have everything you need to find. And afterwards, you could also configure what post functions will be there. So in this template, we have enabled that when you find any kind of personal data, there will just be a comment in the ticket. So the system administrator knows, okay, here a phone number or credit card number was deleted. This was now a very high overview of this use case because it's really pretty technical and it really depends on your own use case. So here again, if you want to learn more, please come to our booth and we can also schedule a one-on-one technical demo. Hopefully, these use cases have given you a little insight into what our security suite can do. We haven't gone through all of the modules, of course, here are many more. And of course, not through all the use cases either, which would go beyond scope of this session and probably also beyond your patience when it comes to GDPR topic. So to wrap up our presentation, I have a quick recap of what we have discussed. So we have learned that GDPR presents some challenges for companies and that personal data is very valuable. And also we find this personal data almost everywhere. So if you use Jira, you have to take care of these guidelines. And not because of fines or because of violations. Just imagine you go outside and it looks like it's going to rain. Are you taking your umbrella? Probably yes. Better safe than sorry. And same goes for data privacy compliance. And I hope I was able to give you a little guide today on what you have to pay attention to and what Atlassian takes care of and what you have to do yourself. And of course, we're here to support you. So we are really looking forward to a nice conversation in our virtual booth. And please feel free to add me on LinkedIn or write me a short mail. You see it here on the slide. And while we are on the road advertising, I also wanted to make a bit of promo for the next great sessions that are coming up right after a short break. And below on the slide, you see here all the exciting presentations that starts at 12:45. And with that, I say goodbye for now. Thank you for your participation, and I'm really looking forward to a great event.